Good evening, everyone. Today, of course, we will fight against Adma's character of our world, as we do in our every video on this channel. Today, we will travel to China. Historically, I mean that we will discuss nice, quite old by age, but still very good one, synthesis of Chinese history. Actually, it's more cultural history, but the uh, described cultural events are very nicely embedded into the framework of long and complicated history of Chinese state, Chinese nation, Chinese people, Chinese nations, I should say, and Chinese states through the long periods of their history. So the work I would like to talk about today is the book entitled China, a short cultural history. It's actually not short, but the title is like this, by Charles Patrick Fitzgerald, the British Australian historian sinologist. Very brainy guy, one would say. And the book itself is actually quite unique, and actually author made impossible because he presented the history of the Chinese culture, I would say civilization, one should say, better to depict better the meaning of the content of this book, on the within the framework of Chinese history, within one volume, from the early days, very early days, prehistory days, till the beginning of 20th century. So one could say roughly till the end of Imperial China. So I would say China proper, because this what we have now, it's actually a totalitarian communist state that we know that communism works against the culture and civilization in any case, in every territory in which the people of the system rule, unfortunately, other people. So the book itself is more than good, and despite not so huge volume with respect to the broad topic it covers, one can find very interesting material there, like the description of the most important philosophical schools from so-called 100 philosophical schools period of Chinese history, so about 3 centuries before the first emperor, so first unification of China by Qin Shi Huangdi. And the most important intellectual trends are nicely described, just to convey the main idea to the reader. It's done miraculously. I don't know how author did it, but he did it very well. There is also a very nice depiction of the social changes through centuries. And of course, author has his own sympathies and antipathies. So I will start with the sympathies I agree with. So his love to Tang dynasty completely corresponds with my great sympathy to the achievements of this Chinese dynasty and its history that was equally turbulent and equally beautiful, but also extremely productive in terms of culture and technology. Like Chinese poetry achieved its best shape within this period. And also, author more than me likes the times of the pacifistic Sung dynasty. Later he is mourning Sung dynasty very much when his narratives of the Chinese history, cultural history also, goes to the Mongol conquest in the early 13th century when the Sung dynasty was defeated. And I cannot agree with his evaluation of the achievement of Yuan, so Mongol dynasty itself. For instance, the reign of its founder Kublai is for me one of the most shining, most brilliant and most beautiful period in Chinese history. I know many Chinese people maybe disagree with me because this period was marked by huge social injustice, like segregating people according to their ethnic origin and defining their privileges or lack of privileges on the basis of that. And there were many problems and injustices. But one cannot forget that during Yuan dynasty, for instance, Chinese theater, famous one, adopted its final shape. And there was also a lot of technological progress, like improvement of gunpowder, improvement of many optic devices, constructing sophisticated cranes, and many other things. So one should be more, I would say, balanced in the evaluation of this period. And the funny thing is that in one chapter, Mr. Fitzgerald condemns completely Mongol conquerors and Yuan dynasty that originated from them. But on the second chapter, slowly he mentions some achievements of this historical period and properly attributes some of these achievements to the representatives of this great dynasty. But the most I would say not shocking, but the most disgusting for me in this book, but it doesn't decrease the value of this work, is the great sympathy author expresses to typing rebellions. Typing rebellions actually was a really crazy and very lethal for many people and dangerous movement that resulted in first organized genocides. It was a mixture of Western fanatic Protestantism plus some Chinese rigorous approach to reality that originated from some of the philosophical schools I mentioned before. Because, Chinese people, like every civilized and cultural nation for centuries, many people started to think, like in Greece and Rome, and they created many different views on different things. Some of these views were brilliant and very good ones. Some of these views were not so brilliant and not so good ones. And actually, with such mixture of fanatism like typing rebellion period and difficulties of Qing dynasty, the final dynasty, unfortunately, the worst ideas from these philosophical schools came to the surface and were adapted into the reality with catastrophic consequences. And the funny thing also is that author seemingly he had leftist ideas, and on the basis of this, how he evaluates some historical periods, I can conclude that. But it's not agreement with my views, as my followers and spectators already know. But despite these flaws, and also there was a very funny confusion with respect to unifier of Japan, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, because Mr. Fitzgerald entitles him as shogun. And the ones who know history of Japan knows that the great unifier of this country, so I mean Japan, despises the compromised Akigara family that was holding the shogun title, that he didn't accept this title despite the fact he was actually ruling Japan as shogun was expected to rule, and he was fulfilling the function. And he was on duty, doing it well, of course with iron fist, but well. But the title Mr. Hideyoshi accepted and used was title Kampaku, which is something close to Chancellor. And later, when he started to withdraw from public life slowly at the end of his own biological life, he was using the quite modest title Taiko, which is like prince, like prince, more regional prince. But these are the things that these are the errors that happen. I should say I'm scared when I encounter it, but they happen also in the works of some Japanologist with this shogun title and Toyotomi Hideyoshi. But it happens, nothing is perfect. But good that there are classical works when everything is done. So I recommend you reading the edition of this book, because firstly it was published, the book by Fitzgerald in 1935, but I recommend you to read the one of the last editions from 1961. So China, a short cultural history by Charles Patrick Fitzgerald. It's a great, solid introduction, quite advanced introductory text to the adventures with all people interested in Chinese culture, history, and also in China itself. And Mr. Fitzgerald, you see it from the text, knew very well from his own experience Chinese peoples, I should say, of many nations, and wrote very nicely about them and also their characteristic features. So take care and look at this book. Very good position. Bye.